Well, as you saw in my thumbnail, it's all over. No, I'm not going to die. I haven't been diagnosed with an illness, but I needed to get your attention. I'm about to publish a book I've been working on for 33 years. Do you know anybody that's been working on a book for 33 years? It becomes a part of you. And you know, it's right now in 2025. Now, I began this thing in 1992, this thing I'm going to talk about. I'm glad it's coming to an end. I'm so glad, because it's been 33 years in the making, and I'm getting tired of it. It needs to end. It needs to end. This is why I'm shooting for 2025, finally, for the publication of my book, In Progress. It's been in progress for 33 years now. And the official title of the book now, you know, and I've played around with titles. I've played around with probably a dozen different types of ways of titling this book. But I think the one that I just came up with that seems the most logical is Tempo and Duration in the Music of Bach. And the subtitle is, excuse me, I'm going to read it from my computer screen, Uncovering J.S. Bach's Science of Tempo, Symbolism, and Proportion. There has never been a book ever written like this on this topic. And so I highly urge you to buy my book when it comes out, either in PDF or hard copy form, and you will learn a lot about Bach that you didn't know already. Some astonishing things Bach did. And I want to unveil all of Bach's secrets to you in this book. I've worked so hard and so long on this book, 33 years. That's over 3 decades. Over 3 decades. I've been going on and off and on and off. Will this thing ever finish? Will it ever finish? Just to put you in perspective, I started this tempo project on Bach, or I discovered this with a really whirlwind of an epiphany in 1992. I was just a graduate student. I was working on my doctoral degree in piano, a master's in musicology, and I stumbled across some very, very intriguing and astonishing findings in Bach's works that I investigated further. And when I found these things out in 1992, I couldn't sleep for barely 2 or 3 days. It was that powerful. It was a powerful epiphany I had that allowed me to figure out Bach's system of tempo. Now, in this video, in a couple minutes, I'm going to just go through a few cantatas, just a couple cantatas, to show you examples of how Bach operated with his musical science. But you know, this has taken now 3 decades for me to finally get down in written form and to actually explain it to people and make sense. You know, when I first came up with this theory over 30 years ago, I was trying to explain it to people, to colleagues and musical colleagues and students at the university. You know, I was only like 28. Now I'm 62. It's been almost my whole working life I've been working on this, and it's still not completed yet. And so that's why really it's finished, it's done. And I'm gonna make an effort to get it done now in the next few months, so you'll have it. I'm sorry for dragging it out too long, but it's just, this is a huge project, and it takes a long time to do this. And a lot of great thought needs to put into it. So anyway, I've spent the last 2 weeks going over several cantatas. I go over them in big chunks of 20, and I reanalyze them. So what I've analyzed maybe 10 or 20 years ago, I'll reanalyze and I'll either come to the same conclusions as I did 10 or 20 years ago, or I will slightly modify it. based on new research or new opinions or new findings that I have. So a lot of my research is somewhat subjective, but most of it is objective. I have a system down of analytical tables to where you can actually figure out what Bach was thinking in his compositions. So I wanted to make this video on Bach's cantatas because the cantatas, Bach's church cantatas and also his secular cantatas, are, I believe, the works that most elegantly display Bach's genius of musical science. The cantatas say it all. I think that if you analyze the cantatas, if you buy my book when it's ready and you simply just go over the cantata tables and look at the numbers, look at the reasoning, listen to the recordings, you'll come to the same conclusion as me, that Bach operated with a special system where he counted his numbers of measures. He wanted his compositions to be certain numbers of measures long. We can figure that out. I've figured this all out, and I want to bring my findings to you. I want to unveil Bach's secrets to the world right now. This is the first time I've done this. You know, I've had my YouTube channel for 17 years. I have never once revealed the secrets like I'm going to today in Bach's cantatas. So without any further ado, stay tuned here, and I'm going to go to a screen video view where I can talk and scroll a little. And so my voice will be a little bit different because it's on a different microphone. So stay tuned. This is a fairly long video. It's almost 30 minutes of cantata discussions here. So get your coffee and tea, sit back, and delve into these analyses with me as I go through just a couple or a few of Bach's cantatas. Thank you for joining me, and I really, really look forward to finishing this project. I'm done. It's ripe. It's finished. I'm ready to. You know, if this takes any longer, I think I'll probably just have a stroke or something, because I've been doing this so long. I want it to finish. So, anyway, I'm really excited, as you can see. So without any further ado, here's an analysis of some of Bach's cantatas. Okay, so here is a tentative table of contents for my book that I have been working on for now 33 years off and on. This is a lifelong project that I've been conducting over the last 3 decades. I know that sounds very long, but this is sort of just a tentative table of contents of the. So you can look this over and see if any of this appeals to you, and definitely get my book when it comes out, and you will learn a lot of new things about Bach's music and the way he planned his tempos and his organization of his works. So basically, after explaining a little about myself, I go into a foreword. I have part one. Part one consists of roughly 40 to 50 pages of just a background of the theory with lots of musical examples and the statement of the initial theory or hypothesis. And there's lots of really nice, interesting, and fascinating tidbits in here that you might be interested to, that are not necessarily related to tempo, but have to do with Bach's use of number and letter symbolism, like for instance in the Art of Fugue here, which I believe I have been the discoverer of these things. I am the first to discover these things that I'm laying out in my book here. Those are relevant to Bach's use of numbers and the way that he used his numbers in his compositions. So here I'm just scrolling through part one, which is mostly text and explanations, explaining about Bach's musical science and reconstructing Bach's system of tempo based on the system of analysis that I developed over 30 years ago. So now I'm scrolling through here part one, and I'm going to get eventually to the cantatas because I am covering all of his, or most of Bach's music. I would say probably 90% of Bach's output will be in this book. So I can't get to everything, but I have really tried hard to analyze as many of Bach's works as I possibly can. So when this book is finished, it's not going to be 185 selected cantatas anymore. Well, it used to be 50. So I thought, well, if I'm going to finish this project, I need to just limit it to 50 cantatas and show examples. But then I thought, well, no, I really need to show it in all its glory. You have to have all the cantatas. So I'm working now on analyzing all the cantatas, which most of the analysis and tables I've done previously in previous years. I'm just sort of rehashing them right now and to make sure they're all correct and to my liking. So anyway, just to make this a little shorter, I'm going to just focus on maybe just a cantata or two, whatever we have time for. So I'm going to scroll down here to, by the way, these are all cantata tables. So these are all analytical tables of each of the cantatas. So for the past week or two, I've been working mostly on cantatas in the 160s all the way to the 200s. So I'm going to discuss this cantata number 162 now. One reason is because it's fresh in my mind. I just analyzed it this morning. I think it's a very good example, as all of these cantatas are, of Bach's genius of the way that he organizes cantatas. Okay, so first things first. Before anything, you need to learn how to read these tables. So these tables are laid out very objectively. There's no personal bias in these tables at all. These are the movements. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever movements in the cantata. You have your aria, your arias and recitatives, and in parentheses, that's the voice type: bass, tenor, soprano, alto, so forth. You have a chorale here at the end. So this is very typical of one of Bach's sort of smaller cantatas, in which he has three major movements: the bass aria, the soprano aria, and the duet between the alto and tenor. Those are what we can consider major movements. The minor movements are the recitatives, usually shorter movements, number 2 and 3 and 6 in this case, the chorale. So my analyses lead me to believe that Bach didn't care so much about unifying the shorter minor movements like recitatives and chorales, although he did very often do that, but not always. So you have to sort of weigh it out to see whether things are coincidental or not. But one thing that's not coincidental, and one thing that Bach did plan, really in all of his cantatas and all of his works, really, and that's really the astonishing thing about this book that I'm going to publish, is that you can actually figure out how many measures Bach planned in his works, in almost all his works. You can figure out what Bach planned. First things first, let's learn how to read a table like this. So it's laid out very objectively here with the movements. And in this case, we have three major movements: an aria, and a duet aria, separated by shorter recitatives and a chorale at the end. This is very typical for the way that Bach organizes cantatas. Next, in all of these analytical tables, the next column over is the key of that movement. Sometimes there is no key because I don't really know what key it's in, and that's not really that important. These aren't that important anyway. It's just telling you what key it's in. These are the important things right here: the time signature and the number of measures. That's what you need to focus on here. And also the tempo right here in this column here. Because I'm using Microsoft Word and I can't do note values. Q is quarter note, DQ is dotted quarter, so forth. Okay, so that's how I I do this system of tempo over here. And, for time's sake, I cannot explain how I came up with these tempos. But if you want a background on the way that I came up with these tempos, you need to go to bachscholar.com and read about that. But because that's a whole topic in itself, and that would take about an hour to explain. So I'm not here to explain how I got these tempos. I'm just here to explain that we will assume these tempos from the outset, and we're going to see what the results are. So we have an aria for bass here, opening this cantata. It has 55 measures of 4/4 time. This is not a fast aria. Any good conductor or performer will do it generally pretty slow, and generally the tempo seems to be around 54. So I'm going to set this at 54. If you perform this aria at 54 beats per minute, it will last just a tad over 4 minutes. In fact, one measure over 4 minutes. So we have 4:04, it will last in actuality, and then if we round it off to 4, that's what I call the ideal duration, round it off. And then this is the percentage difference or discrepancy between this and this. So that tells you how far, Bach was off from the ideal. So we'll come back to this one, but let's look at movement 3, aria for soprano here. It's in D minor, 12/8 time, 53 measures. This is a fairly lively movement. It's a little more lively than the first movement, but it's not terribly fast. So the average tempo here for most performers seems to be around this, I would say up to about 72. I'd say 72 is a little fast, but most performers are between in that range, around 65 or to 70 or so. So I'm setting this at 72. Now, look at this. This is interesting. If you perform this soprano aria at 72 beats per minute, you can just do the math. You can figure it out that if Bach had written one more measure, 54 instead of 53, it would have the duration of exactly 3 minutes. So the duration of the third movement is just under 3 minutes. Most performances tend to be around maybe 3:15 or 3:20, or maybe even 3:30. So they're pretty close. But I think that some of them could be sped up just a tad to make it 3 minutes. Try it, you'll see. Anyway, let's move on to the next major movement, movement 5, the duet for alto and tenor. This is in C major, it's in 3/4 time, it has 148 measures, and it is a fairly lively movement, which the average tempo for most performance seems to be around 108, which is on one of the tempos in our ideal tempo matrix. And that's where these tempos come from. So now, assuming 108 per quarter, you can just calculate it out, do the math. It's really amazing. What happens is that this fifth movement, this duet, performed at 108 per quarter, it will last 4 minutes and 6 seconds, just a little over 4 minutes, right here. So in this case, rounding it off to 4 shows a discrepancy of 2.8%. Now, look at the whole composition, the whole cantata or the whole building, so to speak, as if these were rooms in a building. Look at that. Look at symmetrical. See? You have a 4-minute opening aria. You have a 4-minute closing aria or duet. And in the middle, you have a 3-minute soprano aria. So these are equal. So in these bullet points under each cantata, what I'm doing is I'm listing these, another way of saying this. So this 1 and 1 means that movements 1 and 5 are equal in durations. They have a 1:1 duration ratio of 4 minutes each. In actuality, they're a little over 4 minutes if you do these tempos exactly. But this where we're rounding them off to 4, and then movement 3 has a duration of 3 minutes. And so Bach, usually what he did was he usually did one of two things. He would always relate two of the movements together, such as these two. And then the other movement, if there's another one, like in a three major movement cantata, he would, one of two things. He would either make this a whole number duration, like here, like 3 minutes, that's not really related to these durations here, or he would make this 4 minutes, and they would all be 4 minutes. But I think that making this third movement 4 minutes would make it too slow. So I think 3 minutes is the better option here. So sometimes it's hard to decide, and I have to really, weigh out the two options. But I think I'm pretty certain here that Bach wanted 4-minute outer movements and a 3-minute inner movement here, and with a shorter recitatives and a chorale at the end. Those aren't so important, but really important are the major movements. Those are like the rooms in the house, and the cantata is the house. Now let's look at cantata number 163. This is actually it's from the same year. So you can see, also nice is up here. I list if I can, if available, the years and the day that he performed these. So you can see, you can do a lot of comparing of these two. So now in the same sort of set of Trinity cantatas here, cantata number 163, this is interesting, okay? So the aria here, okay, first of all, let's look 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this also consists of 6 movements. We have an aria, a recitative, and a duet. There's 4 major movements. It looks like this recitative number 4 is more of a major movement than a minor movement because it's a duet between soprano and alto. So it's almost like an aria in itself. So we're dealing here with 4 major movements and 2 minor movements, the recitative in number 2 and chorale in number 6. Now look at the numbers. Okay, a lot can be said. You can really determine a lot of Bach's intentions and thoughts by looking at the numbers. So look at the time signatures and look at the number of measures that Bach gives each one of his movements. Very interesting. Very interesting. Do you see the first movement has 61 measures of 4/4 time, and this movement number 4, which is a soprano alto duet recitative, that has 4/4 time also, but 40 measures. Now, interesting, 61 and 40. Well, if you round that off to 60, we have 60/40, exact 3/2 relationship. Whenever Bach did something like this in his works, it means something. It means Bach was up to something. This is a red flag. So let's investigate this further with the actual tempos. So in the tenor aria in the beginning, this is not a particularly fast aria. It's not allegro, although it is a little faster than the one in cantata number 162. I think a good tempo here is 63, and that most performers tend to agree with that. So if you perform this opening aria at 63 beats per minute with 61 measures of 4/4, it's going to last a little under 4 minutes. In other words, 2 measures under 4 minutes. So had Bach achieved 63 measures, it would be exactly 4 minutes, assuming 63 for the tempo. Next, let's skip this recitative. Let's go on to the aria, the bass aria number 3, movement 3. It's an E minor, 4/4 time, 53 measures. This is also not a particularly fast piece or fast movement, but it's not slow either. So I think a good tempo here is also 63. So let's give it the same tempo as the opening aria. I think that's appropriate. Now, if you calculate out how long this movement lasts with 53 measures of 4/4 time played at 63, it comes to 3 minutes and 21 seconds. I mean, that doesn't seem like anything to really lose sleep over or anything. It's just 3 minutes and 20 seconds. Okay, big deal. All right. But now let's go on uh, to the next movement here, the recitative for soprano and alto. It's in D major, 4/4 time, 40 measures, and we're going to assume also a very good tempo is 63. I think Bach was in a sort of moderate mood the day that he composed this cantata. All these tempos here up to number 4 are just sort of moderate. They're not fast and not slow. So assuming 63 for the soprano and alto duet, which is a very good tempo, which most performers tend to agree with, the the actual duration comes to just a little over 2.5 minutes, 2 minutes and 32 seconds to be exact. It's also nothing that shouts out at us anything. So we're just going to go to the next one first. So let's look at this soprano and alto duet, the next one here. So it's in D major also, 3/4 time, 92 measures, and it is a faster tempo, but not too terribly fast. So we're going to assign it the tempo 84 beats per minute. So it's a relatively, I guess we could call that an allegro. So I guess Bach wanted to finish it off with something more lively than these moderate tempos here. Well, let's calculate it out. So 92 measures of 3/4 time done at 84 beats per minute. It comes to actually 317. Okay, now look. Okay, look at this one. 317, 321. See those? 317, 321. So that's a red flag. Those are equal. So take 321 and 317, round them off to 320 here. Bach was almost exact here. So had Bach just achieved, like, he was only a half a measure off in the third movement. So that's perfect, virtually perfect. If you look at movement 5, he has 92 measures. He was only 1.5 measures off from achieving 320, assuming a tempo of 84. See? So I believe that Bach planned this. This is not a coincidence, because not only are these two movements equal at 320, but miraculously, the first movement rounds off to 4 minutes, and the fourth movement rounds off to 240. So see, 352 rounds off to 4, 232 can round off to 240. In other words, had Bach composed 2 more measures in movement 1 and 2 more measures in movement 4, he would have achieved 4 minutes in 2 minutes and 40 seconds, bringing it in line with 3-2 ratio. But actually, it was even better than that. You know what Bach did was he fell 2 measures short in the first movement, and then I don't know if it was intentional or not, but he fell 2 measures short in the fourth movement and made them exactly equal. It really is quite something when you look at the numbers, when you examine the numbers and piece it together like a detective. You can actually figure out how many measures Bach planned for his movements and the amount of time he planned for his movements. So in Cantata number 163, movements 1 and 4 relate 3-2 with 4 minutes and 2 minutes and 40 seconds, while the third and fifth movements relate 320, 1-1 ratio, very, very close with only very small discrepancies or margins of error. It really is quite amazing what Bach did. Let's look at the next one. Let's look at Cantata number 164 now. By the way, Bach's cantatas are not in chronological order, so 164 is not from 1715. It's actually from 1725, from 10 years later. So let's see what a 10-year older Bach did in Cantata number 164. This one here consists of 6 movements, just like the others. It has 3 major movements, 1, 3, 5, 3 minor movements, 2, 4, and 6. And the 3 major movements relate, I'll just cut to the chase and just tell you the results here. It comes to 5 minutes, 3 minutes and 20 seconds, 3 minutes and 20 seconds for the 3 major movements. So movements 1, 3, 5, 3, 2, 2. I need to add a number. Yeah, I need to add a 2 there. A 3-2-2 duration ratio at 5 minutes, 320, 320. And then also, it might be coincidental, but maybe not. In this particular cantata, if movement 2 and movement 4 are done at their natural tempos, this leads to also a very, very close 3-2 duration ratio. That could very well be coincidental. I'll admit that, but this is not. 5 minutes, 320 and 320. That is not coincidental. Bach planned that. That tells us that Bach was aiming for 107 measures in the opening aria, because 107 measures at this tempo leads to 5 minutes exactly. He hit the third measure, or the third movement exactly, 320. 45 measures of 4/4 time at 54. And then he was only 6 measures off, or 3.8% margin of error on the last movement, the 5th movement, the duet between soprano and bass in G minor. Very interesting. This tells us this. Notice how the third movement Bach hit right on, perfect. He hit it at 320. But when performed at its proper tempo, or its appropriate tempo of 96, it's very fast. This 5th movement at 96 with 154 measures of 2-2, or a la breve, lasts 3 minutes and 12 seconds. 3 minutes and 12. You can see it. That's just a little short of 320. That tells us this. That tells us that Bach was planning, before he put pen to paper, before he even wrote this cantata out, he planned the major movements. He planned them. He said, okay, I want the first movement to last 5 minutes. I want these 2 movements to each last 320, so it will be 1/2 shorter than 5 minutes. So he figured out that first, and then he figured out how many measures that would require to do the job. In this case, it would have required 107 measures for the opening aria. Oh, he was just 1 measure off, though. In measure 3, he was exact, and in measure 5, he was just 6 measures off, but this is fast. So 6 measures for something at 96 beats per minute in a la breve is not that, it's not that long, it's not that many seconds. I mean, being off 6 measures in a slower adagio in 4/4 is very, very large. But being 6 measures off in a fast allegro like this is not that bad. It's not that much. So you can see it's pretty obvious here that when you study the number of measures and the tempos and the durations, that Bach was planning this movement to last 160 measures. But Bach was only human, so he didn't get everything perfect, and he was off sometimes. So he was off by 6 measures here. He was only off by 1 measure in the first movement, and he was perfect in the third movement. Now, this just goes on and on and on and on and on. I'll tell you, I'll just give you a preview to my book. What I just went over here for this short, these few cantatas, Bach does this kind of thing really accurately for all his cantatas. Virtually every cantata. I think I've only found so far like maybe 3 movements that are problematic that I really can't figure out. But it's pretty much everything is figured out within a 2% margin of error. It really is an amazing thing that I believe that I've figured out Bach's system of composition and his scientific method of composing. And I think that this can best be seen in his cantatas. That's why I made this video here. So, so you can inform yourself on Bach's cantatas and start studying them and listen to them. And when my book is complete, you can get my book and you can look at these tables and analyze them yourself. I love these tables because they really tell you objectively all the numbers of measures of Bach's works. And like I said earlier in this video, I think I've so far analyzed about 90% of Bach's works. And this is simply astonishing what Bach did. You know, I've spent 33 years doing this and I'm still astonished at what Bach did. And I just can't wait to share this with the world because I am, you know, it's time. I've been doing this too long now, 33 years, and it's time for me to unleash this on the world. You will be astonished what Bach did and how he unified his compositions, or, you know, in Bach's own words, made his well-regulated church music. So anyway, without any further ado, I think I'm going to end this video now. I mean, I could talk literally for hours and hours and hours on on all of the analyses I've done here. In fact, not just the cantatas, but the instrumental works and the organ works. Here's organ works here. Preludes and fugues for organ. Uh, Analytical tables. Here's like a table of the inventions. Uh, the everything, most of his keyboard music's on here. The six partitas. You know, so it's not just the cantatas, but in order to understand Bach's musical science, I really do believe that I really do believe that the cantatas provide us with the clearest answers to Bach's intentions regarding tempo and duration. So thank you for joining me in this video. Stay tuned for more videos like this, and I will let you know when my book is out and you can get it and have fun with it. I'll see you in the next video.